Hello everyone and welcome back to Your Basic Nerd, which is still a channel where I document my highly imperfect attempts at nerdy hobbies. And today, as you can tell from the view outside, it's a gloomy day. It's very cold, windy, rainy, so it's the perfect day to be working on Simon's coffee, and we're going to be making Kettles. So as you can tell from the instructions, we have a couple of them to make. I think it's going to be a fun step, or at least I hope so. We've been working with paper pieces a lot over the past few videos, and now I think we're going to be working with different materials, so hopefully it's a nice change and we have a lot of fun with it. So let's get into it.
Okay, so it's future me in a voiceover showing you how I completed kettle number one. I'll explain why in a little bit, but here you can first see the instructions. It's pretty straightforward, mostly paper pieces, and then this small gold bead, as they call it, to put on top of the kettle. Personally, I would call it the tiny gold bead. I think one of the greatest challenges is not to lose it when you're completing the step. And here you can see that I already found the pieces that I needed to cut, so I'm gonna start with that. They're all decent sizes except for K30, which was quite small, I think less than a centimeter wide. So I was worried about folding it and managing it, which I was right about, as you'll see later on. So here I am cutting the pieces. And while I'm doing that, maybe just a quick word about why I'm recording this voiceover. Basically, I decided to change my filming setup for this video. I don't know if you'll be able to tell the difference, but it's the first time that I have a semi-professional, let's say, filming setup as opposed to the artisanal one that I started out with. So before, I didn't want to invest a ton of money into YouTube because I wasn't sure I was gonna keep up with it. So I built this artisanal setup with college textbooks and a piece of cardboard onto which I could put my phone to film overhead. And then I realized recently that ring lights are maybe like $40 on Amazon, and you can put your phone into the ring light, and the setup is basically so much better. So I decided to invest in that, and I figured even if I lose $40 and I don't use it all that much, it's not the end of the world. So this was the first video where I was using the new setup, which I was happy with, but is also there's a learning curve to use it correctly and get the right angle for the image and manage the sound as well. So basically, while I was focused on completing this first schedule, I was also trying to look at the image I was filming, try to ensure that the sound was okay. So it was a lot, which is why it's probably more interesting to hear me talk about the kettle afterwards than hear my mumblings during filming. So I decided to spare you from that and hopefully give you something better. And so by now I've finished cutting all the pieces, and now I need to fold them and glue them as instructed on the pieces directly. I thought that I needed to glue the small one as well. You could really see how small it was in my fingers, but actually you just needed to fold it, so I struggled for nothing. And then the other ones, you could fold the small line, and it allowed you to basically roll the paper and join the two extremities, glue them together to make cylindrical forms that would then form the kettle.
Well, so it's probably the roughest piece I've made to date. I think I messed up a bit, especially with the beak, as you can clearly tell. I thought you were supposed to glue it like the rest of the pieces because they say trim and glue, but apparently you just needed to fold it and then glue it onto the main part of the kettle. So my bad, but also don't tell me to trim and glue. But probably I should have read the full instructions before I started, so really my bad. However, I'm not thrilled with the instructions anyway because the proportions of the kettle in the picture definitely aren't the same as the ones in mine. And I followed the instructions very closely. I don't think there would have been any way to make it shorter than mine came out because you can tell on the picture that it's supposed to be shorter, but I folded everything on the line when I rolled the two main pieces, so I don't think there was any way to do it differently. And also the little hat sits very awkwardly on top of the second part of the kettle, so clearly something isn't working, in addition to the beak that I messed up myself. So a bit disappointed. Hopefully the other ones will be better. Again, the point of Your Basic Nerd is that I mess up sometimes and my stuff doesn't always look pretty, and I think that's what's interesting about it, but it's a great example of that with the first kettle. So with that said, let's move on to kettle 2 and hopefully we do a tiny bit better. Alright, so we took a little break after kettle 1 and now we're moving on to kettle 2, which is a bit different. Couple new pieces, so a glass rod, still the tiny bead, and then a different design for the kettle, so hopefully this one goes better. I've also found the pieces that I need to cut, so it's basically all the black ones. And here I'm just cutting out all the little holes in what will be... Oh shit, I could... Oh. Okay, so I was hoping this one was gonna go better, but I accidentally cut one part of the kettle, so I'm gonna glue it back on. It's funny because last week I had such a great time with the steps that I completed, and I was so enthusiastic about starting the channel back up. But now the kettles are turning out to be a bit more complicated than I thought. And I gotta say, I'm not enjoying it as much. But hopefully once they're done, they're gonna look pretty enough to fit within the whole Simon Coffee scene and we can forget about them. Okay, so this was stressful, but it's over. We have our little set of strips, I guess, including one that I had to re-glue, one that has some white left because it almost came off, but it's over. And then what else do we need? We need N3, 4, and 5. Okay, so I think everything is ready. And then glue as shown. Okay. I guess I should start with this. And then this one is also gonna wrap around the glass rod, but then it's gonna hide the imperfections in the first piece. So I think that makes more sense. See, I'm reading the instructions now to make sure I'm doing everything correctly. And then I put the little cap on, the beads, and the handle. Okay. So I guess I need to put at least a bit of glue on all of the tiny strips. That is gonna be messy, which at this point no one is surprised by. Okay, so let's hope for the best. I'm gonna start here. Oop. Maybe I was too hopeful already. Because since the paper isn't pre-rolled, it's just sort of stiff. So I guess I need to take it in my hands and then try to roll it as best as I can. Oh, and there's actually quite a bit of extra, so I think we should be able to hide the one strip that I did tear and glue back on. It's definitely not perfect, but we'll roll with it. Alright, it's kind of dirty, but not as bad as the first one. And then I can put the little hat on, which hopefully will hide a lot of the imperfections. Okay, so this is already going better than the first one. I guess I went in with the first one excited and ready to enjoy it. But apparently you can't really do that with Simon's Coffee. You need to really sit down, look at the instructions, and strategize before you start anything. So I'm learning every time. Maybe I would prefer a kit where you could actually enjoy it, but since I have Simon's Coffee, I'm gonna make do with what I have. And then I'll stick the gold bead on top. Now the tweezers are coming in handy. Oops, and they're full of glue. Let's try that again. So Kettle 2 is officially done. I'll show it to you in the end with the other ones. And now we're starting on Kettle 3. I've taken out all the pieces that I need. So again, a glass bead, a longer glass rod, and then a piece of wire, which we haven't worked with in a while, so this should be fun. And then again, some circles and rectangles that you're gonna need to cut, fold in half, then glue, as usual. Okay, so fold and glue. So what do we have next? Wrap the glass rod with paper cut and glue as shown. So basically you're supposed to leave a little bit of the glass visible in the middle, otherwise you roll the rectangles onto the rod, and then those are the bottom and the top of the kettle. And now comes the most interesting part, the wire, which is certainly going to be finicky and annoying. So basically, you're supposed to make a nest with it, and then that becomes the handle. So you have to fold it twice, 5 millimeters from each end of the wire, so that there's 10 millimeters left in the middle. So that's one. And then let's measure the second one. At least this can be approximative and no one cares. And then you should move the wire on both ends so that it looks like an S, so it's round instead of pointy, and the middle is gonna remain the same. All right, it's not perfect, but I think it's not the worst we've seen. And then you pick a side and you glue it onto the kettle. Okay, and then the tiny gold bead. Okay, so I think that was the easiest up until now. Again, I'll show it to you later when I finished all 4 of them, but things are looking up. And then what does the last one look like? Oh, it's only 2 pieces. So a silver body and then again a wire that I guess you shape as a handle. And I don't think it even uses glue, so we get a nice break. So let's see. So now we're gonna read the instructions carefully. Twine the kettle body with wire. Is there just one step or are there several? Okay, there's 2 of them. So you start by twining and basically you hope that the rest is the right length to make it to the bottom as well. Okay, I think we're gonna roll with this one. Every step always looks like so much fun, and then once you're doing it, there's always something frustrating in it. And there's apparently 3 other kettles left, so I think it's gonna be the last one for today. But at least they're all done. One of them is looking very terrible and the other ones are a bit better. But again, it's always more frustrating than I think. So I don't know if it's my patience that's the issue or if it's the kit. But Simon's coffee, frustrating right now. So this is what we're ending up with. 4 kettles out of the 7, so there's still 3 remaining. Not some of my best work, especially the gray one in the top right, which as I said, I think is the worst piece that I've made up until now. But the other 3 are actually looking fairly okay. And I guess, as I say every time, it won't matter too much in the grand scheme of things when I put everything together. Everything is going to be a bit imperfect, but hopefully it's the whole look that sells it. But still some frustration today. Hopefully next time will be better. At least I'll be more patient and make sure to read the instructions completely before I start. But hope you enjoyed this video despite the frustration. I'm looking forward to the next one and hope I do better. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for following along and see you in the next one. Bye!